Okay, welcome back. Now, we compared and contrasted different concepts with values. Now, let's examine the interrelationships. Now, in this hypothetical figure, you observe the value, attitude, behavior, norm, and need relations. Now, remember, values are trans-situational. They are not specific to different situations. This is one way of conceptualizing it, actually. But values are trans-situational, but attitudes and behaviors are specific in different contexts, because in different situations, there are different attitude objects. And for different attitude objects, we have different evaluations, and these evaluations guide different kinds of behaviors in these contexts. And also, norms define socially accepted ways of behaving, as you all know, and needs also determine behaviors as motivating, energizing factors, and needs are triggered or startled by need-relevant cue stimuli in the situation. So what we have talked so far is that values determine attitudes, and as you all know, attitudes determine behaviors. Values can indirectly predict or determine behaviors through the mediation of attitudes. So what is important to you helps you to evaluate a certain object in a certain way, and this evaluation leads you to behave in a certain way. But it is also possible that values can start or trigger behaviors directly if these behaviors have the potential to express these important values for us. Also, it is not only values and attitudes which act on behaviors, but social norms also define sometimes in a given context how we would like to behave. And social norms can directly or indirectly, directly cause behaviors, and values can help us to accept certain norms, and needs are internal affective states triggered by cues in the environment. So as you observe, a behavior occurs by means of different factors affecting it directly or indirectly: values, attitudes, needs, norms, and so on. Okay, so here we do not have personality, but personality is another determinant of behavior. Now we will go through this schema with a specific example. So suppose you come to the class in the morning, okay? Class is a context, a situation, a certain setting, physical setting. When you come to class, let's say you see a friend in the class. Let's say this friend is called Murat, okay? The sight of your friend Murat is a stimulus for triggering the need for affiliation, a desire to start and maintain relationships. Okay, so if you know Murat for a long period of time, you would like to maintain your relationship with Murat, which is the very definition of this need. You wouldn't be conscious of it. Okay, so the sight of Murat starts need for affiliation to guide your behavior. So just now assume that politeness is important to you. Politeness is a value. It is the definition of the desirable, okay? If you believe politeness is important, then this would lead you to also think that it is nice to salute people. So saluting people is the attitude object here, and your evaluation of saluting people is that it is nice, okay? Now, this is your attitude. So if politeness is important, then you come to evaluate saluting people positively. If you evaluate saluting people positively, then you would say, "Good morning, Murat." Okay? So this is a simple event which might take place in a typical school day. So, "Good morning, Murat" is the behavior, the verbal behavior, which serves to express politeness as a value, which serves to express the attitude of nice to salute people, and it is also guided by the need for affiliation, which is triggered by your friend's sight. But there are also norms which prescribe us to behave in certain ways in certain situations. So a norm, for instance, would state one should salute friends of courtesy. Nezaket icabı arkadaşlarını selamlamalısın. Okay? So if you have such kind of a norm, which is the social approval of behaving in a certain way. And this norm would be determined by the importance of politeness, and it would also cause you to behave in a very certain way. So, as you observe here, a simple saying good morning is determined by our values, attitudes, needs, and norms, okay, and how they are interrelated. I guess this is a good sketching of all the concepts that we talked so far. Now, let's look at how values fit in the personality system, okay? Now, most of you who have taken the social psychology course are familiar with multiple self-aspects framework. What's the multiple self-aspects framework, again, for the ones who didn't take the course? Self, our self-concept, is a definition or is a representation of many definitions about who we are. And self-concept is composed of multiple context-specific self-aspects. So I am a son, I am a husband, I am a father, I am a researcher, I am an instructor. These are different roles or aspects that I assume in different contexts. I become son in my family house, I become husband in my own house, I become father when I'm with my children, I become a researcher when I'm in the laboratory, and I become an instructor here and in the classroom. So in different contexts, I have different roles, and each of these roles define who I am. And also these roles are defined, as you would remember, by personality attributes. So let's say as a father, I am loving, kind, and patient. These are personality traits, okay? And each of these different roles might be defined by different personality traits. And these personality traits come to define these different self-aspects or roles in terms of past behaviors that we display, and these behaviors become their definitions. So patient means, for instance, that I inhibited aggressive urge when confronted with bad tempers in my children, okay, as a father. Or I might be as a patient because I listened to small talk without interrupting for an hour, chit chat. Or I might define myself as patient because in the past I explained the same topic for 3 times by using different examples to my students. So as you observe, patient defines husband here, which it also defines father, and it also defines instructor. So I have different behaviors in different contexts as assuming different roles, and each of these different behaviors come to define an abstract trait, which is called patient. So I am a patient instructor because I explained the same topic for 3 times by using different examples. As you see, this is a self-schema, a definition of myself in the classroom context in terms of a specific behavior, which is the definition of my being patient as having that kind of a personality. Now, this is our personality system, okay? This is our self system, as you observe here. Self-concept, which is defined by context-specific self-aspects, which are defined by different, sometimes overlapping attributes or personality traits, which are extracted from specific behaviors in the past. So my experience is abstracted like this as my personality system or self-system. We also have worldviews, remember, the ways of making sense of the world, the existence, and ourselves in it, okay? These are called worldviews. Worldviews are a complex a system of attitudes and values. And values are parts of our worldviews because they define the right or wrong in our existence, okay? So if in my worldview, I have the value, which is called patience, that if patience is important to me, then I'm expected to behave or have attitudes in certain ways, okay? So remember, values define attitudes or determine attitudes. So if patience is important to me, then I would think as an attitude that a good instructor explains until the idea is conveyed. So this is my attitude about instructing. And my attitude towards instructing would determine my behavior. Therefore, I explain the same topic for 3 times by using different examples. So values determine attitudes, determine behaviors. And once I behave in certain ways, I define myself in terms of relevant personality attributes, which are associated with different self aspects in different contexts, and it becomes myself. So my worldview is myself. So my values or my value priorities defines who I am. So look at this path now. This is a very specific path showing you the interrelationship between the self system or the personality system and attitudes and behaviors, okay? So in my worldview, I believe patience is important. It's an important virtue. So as an instructor, I believe I have to explain until the idea is conveyed. Therefore, I explain the same topic for 3 times by using different examples, which helps me to define myself as a patient instructor. Now, as you see, our value priorities and worldviews are closely interlinked with our personalities. So that's a very important lesson to take home, okay? What's the lesson? The lesson is, if values do not become parts of our personalities, they cannot guide our behaviors, okay? So there should be a link between our personalities and values. So values education, to put it now, values education means that we make certain values parts of the personality of the students at schools, okay? So that they become individuals who guide their behaviors in terms of these values to behave in morally acceptable or desirable ways, and their personality becomes a moral personality, which is the very definition of character, as you would remember, okay? So we talked about the representational quality of values. Values are conscious representations or cognitive representations of our needs. So how do we represent values in the long-term memory? It is no different than you represent apple or a fruit, okay? So just look at this figure and let's use this example. Fruit is a category, okay, an abstract category which categorizes many specific examples such as apple, orange, banana, and each of these different examples have sub-examples. So let's say fruit, apple, and apple is Macintosh, golden, and so on and so forth. Do we have any different objects represented or categorized under apple, and apple is categorized under fruit, okay? So this is, remember, the semantic network model. We represent knowledge in that way. We represent social knowledge in that way too. We have categories for social groups or specific kinds of individuals, as you learned in social cognition. So a value is a semantic network representation of what is desirable, in other words. So value is the abstract category here, the highest, or the top category, which categorizes more specific examples. So a value concept is defined as it is good, it is desirable, it is important. So success is a typical is an example value here. Success can be defined in moral terms as it is good, it is desirable, and it is important. And success as a higher category categorizes different objects or attitude objects which might be relevant for success. For example, medal is an attitude object in sports context. Diploma is an attitude object in education context, and profit is an attitude concept in the business context. So success as a higher order category organizes these specific exemplars, medal, diploma, profit, and so on and so forth. And these are called, remember, attitude objects. So value concepts categorize or subsume attitude objects. And each attitude object has an evaluation that we call attitude. So if you like profit, if you like diploma, if you like medal, it means that you have a positive attitude towards these different attitude objects. So where does this evaluation come from? It comes from the relationship between these attitude objects and the value. So if success is good, according to semantic network model of long-term memory knowledge structure, if success is good, then medal is also good, and diploma is also good. If success is desirable, then profit is also desirable. So our evaluations of attitude objects are stored in our memory with the value concept. The definition of the value concept becomes the evaluation of attitude objects, in other words. And each attitude object then, depending on its evaluation, is either approached or avoided. In this case, since success is a positive concept defined in terms of positive attributes being good, desirable, and important, then medal becomes good, desirable, and important. Then running fast also becomes good, desirable, and important. So if success is important to us, medal becomes a positive object. And in order to achieve a medal in the competitions, then we would like to run fast, and we do run fast. So this is the value, attitude, behavior link, okay? And this value, attitude, behavior link, this specific link on the left, it occurs in the context of sports, whereas if success is important for you, having a diploma is like something that you like, then studying becomes something you do in the education context. And if you are in the business context, a business person, for instance, you make sales negotiations with different firms so that you make money, profit out of sales, which would help you to express your value success. So this is how we semantically represent values, attitudes, and behaviors. So again, once this value concept in the long-term memory is activated, becomes usable in your memory. Once this concept is activated, this activation spreads to the exemplars in a given context, and then this value guides the behavior in a specific context so that it serves to express this value, and you are rewarded in the end. So this is only a single value. We have hundreds of values like this: honesty, helpfulness, power, dominance, protecting nature, health, friendship, and so on and so forth. So just try to imagine how interwoven these values are with thousands of attitude objects. For success, medal is an attitude object, let's say. But for security, key or lock or an alarm system would be the attitude object. So first thing, perhaps, in values education, therefore, that we should identify is to find out which attitude objects might be organized under which value concept, because without knowing these attitude objects, we cannot develop attitudes towards these objects in the students, and we cannot expect them to behave in certain ways without having evaluations of these objects or having positive attitudes. I guess that's a clear representation of the semantic network model for value representations. So value concepts organize attitude objects, which organize our behaviors in different contexts. Now, we went through many theoretical details of the values theory. Now, let's go on with specific value theories proposed by Rakic and Schwartz. First, I'll focus on Rakic. It is an important starting point in empirical social psychology literature. Rakic proposed his theory systematically in 1973 in his book, and he defined values as enduring beliefs about which means or ends are preferable to the opposite or converse means and ends. He made a distinction between two types of values. The first type he proposed is instrumental values. Instrumental means if a value is important, it is used as an instrument to achieve certain goals, okay? So instrumental values are beliefs about the preferable modes of conduct, types of behavior, in other words, which are concerned with one's morality and competence. So instrumental values have two subtypes, moral values and competence values. Moral values are related to obligations towards the society, such as being polite or honest, whereas competence values are related to desirable modes of self-actualization, being imaginative or logical, or having self-control. Now, look at this distinction, and let's integrate this model or this theory with the previous knowledge we acquired about character education. Remember, in character education, we learned about performance character and moral character. Here, what you observe in Rakic's theory is that performance character might be associated with competence values, whereas moral character might be associated with moral values, both of which are instrumental values. They are types of behaviors to achieve certain ends. Okay? So having made this integration with character education, now let's move on to the second type, which are called terminal, ending, end state values. So they are the end states, states of existence. They are not types of behaviors. They are states, durumlar, oluş halleri, states that you would like to have once you achieve certain goals. So terminal values are beliefs about the preferable end states, which are concerned with personal or social attainments or goal attainments. So personal values are related to personal attainments. So salvation or peace of mind are values, personal values. These such kind of values refer to goals which are important to enhance yourself, let's say. Social values are related to desirable social end states, such as world at peace or national security. These involve other people's welfare, so they are the social values. Now, as you see here again, personal values can be likened to performance character, whereas social values can be likened to moral character. So, Rakic's theory has some kind of parallelism between the character model that we went through in the last weeks. And I think you should keep it in mind. Actually, in the literature, there is not such a linking, but it's very obvious that moral values and social values refer to moral character, whereas competence values and personal values refer to performance character. And in Rakic's theory, there is a specific measurement tool which is called Rakic Value Survey. He has two lists of value concepts, and each list consists of 18 values, 18 terminal values and 18 instrumental values. And for two lists, people are presented with 18 concepts and they are asked to rank order them. Okay? Rank ordering is an important procedure because the theoretical definition of value priority is the relative importance of one value against the other. Okay, so this was the first measurement, or one of the first measurement tools actually that was used in the literature to measure value priorities of individuals and groups. Okay, so this is Rakic's theory in general, and that's I guess that's all for it. In 1980s, certain criticisms regarding Rakic's theory were proposed. One is by Braithwaite and Lowe. They criticized Rakic's theory because they believed instrumental and terminal value lists do not cover values from different domains. So in Rakic's measurement tool, we had only 36 values in total. And Braithwaite and Lowe believe there might be many different values. So we cannot just measure 36 values, and there might be other values which we are somehow overlooking. So this is one criticism. Another criticism was about the procedure of measurement of values. So ranking procedure is evaluated to be problematic because when you ask people to order 18 concepts in terms of importance, sometimes people think that 2 values or 3 values might be in equal importance, but Rakic's procedure do not allow participants to make equal rank assignments. So values with equal importance cannot be measured. And a third criticism, is that ranking itself is cognitively loading. It is very hard to decide which value is more important or less important than which other value or values. So for especially less educated people, rank ordering was a problematic process, and values may not necessarily be hierarchical, they said. They may all be at equal importance. So these were some criticisms, and they also, Braithwaite and Lowe, extended the list of Rakic, and they made an empirical study and factor analyzed the results, but in factor analysis, statistically or empirically, they did not observe two specific groupings as terminal values and instrumental values. There were different factors which can be labeled in different ways. So the empirical evidence seemed to unsupport Rakij's theoretization, but it was an important starting point. Later, around late 1980s, Schwartz proposed a more comprehensive theory about human values, that they are the cognitive representations of three universal human requirements. So Schwartz believed that all human beings all around the world universally share three needs. One, biological needs. We need to survive. We are in need of hunger, we are in need of thirst, we are in need of sexual intercourse, and so on for our survival. So these are basic biological needs that each and every human being has around the world, regardless of his or her culture. Also, each human being on Earth has social interactional needs, which mean that we want to have and maintain interpersonal relationships. And the third one, the third universal need, according to Schwartz, was social institutional needs, which refer to maintaining intergroup or societal relationships. So individual biological, interpersonal, and intergroup needs are defined. And Schwartz believed that having these three basic needs, different value types would emerge from these different values, from these different requirements. And he also believed that the content and the structure of basic values are universal. So if kindness is a value, it's not only a value in this particular society, but it is also a value in that or another society. But the difference would be across society is that different societies may place different levels of importance to different types of values. So values, or the concepts of values, are universal, but their relative importance differentiates people, groups, and societies. And the hierarchical profile of values determined by relative importance is what distinguishes individuals or societies or groups. And then, referring to these three universal needs, Schwartz identified 10 motivationally distinct value types, which means that there are, according to his theory, there are 10 types of values which organize value concepts having the same motivational underpinnings. And they are organized, each value type is organized in a dynamic relationship to the remaining value types. So these are the categories or value types proposed by Schwartz. So in this first slide, you observe the 5 value types, which we might refer as personal values, let's say, or person-focused values. So they are power, achievement, hedonism, stimulation, and self-direction values. Power and achievement values are supposed to be categorized as self-enhancement values because both power and achievement-related values help an individual or guide an individual to express his or her individuality and make it stronger, exalt it. Power is defined as a value type that is social status and prestige, control or dominance over people and resources. So that's the definition of power type, and you see some exemplar value concepts which are organized under power values. So social power, authority, and wealth are power values. Achievement values are defined as personal success through demonstrative competence according to social standards. So successful, capable, ambitious, these are achievement-related values. But as you observe, being powerful, having authority and wealth is very much similar to being successful, capable, and ambitious. But these refer to success through social standards, whereas these refer to having dominance over people and resources. So they are two distinct categories. They have two distinct sets of value concepts, but this category power and this category achievement value types are very much similar. So they are organized as self-enhancement values. Then comes the hedonism values, which are defined as pleasure or sensuous gratification for oneself. Pleasure, enjoying life are typical examples. Hedonism values, half belong to self-enhancement values, and half belong to openness to change values, which are composed of stimulation and self-direction values, or value types. Stimulation value type is defined as excitement, novelty, and challenge in life, such as daring, a varied life, and exciting life. These are different value concepts organized under stimulation values. And self-direction values are about independent thought and action, choosing, creating, and exploring. So creativity, curiosity, independence, freedom are values pertaining to self-direction values. So stimulation and self-direction values require that an individual can accept novelty and change. So they are categorized as openness to change values. But all of these 5 values prioritize the individual's personal expression. That's why these 2 basic dimensions, self-enhancement and openness to change values, which are power, achievement, hedonism, stimulation, and self-direction, these are all person-focused values. There are also social-focused or other-focused values. So they are organized as value types of universalism, benevolence, tradition, conformity, and security values. As you look at the definition of universalism values, it is the understanding, appreciation, tolerance, and protection for the welfare of all people and nature. Wisdom, social justice, equality, protecting nature are universalism values. But they are mostly about regulating our behaviors in our interactions with outgroup members, the wider society, and nature, the whole existence, in other words. But benevolence values refer to our interactions of which are determined by our interpersonal needs. So they are about regulating our behaviors in our close contact people. So benevolence values are preservation and enhancement of the welfare of people with whom a person is in frequent personal contact. So helpful, honest, forgiving are benevolence values. But as you observe, universalism and benevolence, all these values, wisdom, social justice, equality, protecting nature, being helpful, honest, forgiving, and so on, they all mean that the individual does not take into account his or her own needs, but takes into account the welfare of other people in general. Therefore, universalism and benevolence values are organized as self-transcendence values, öz aşkınlık. So the person transcends the self and focuses on the other. It means, finally, the final dimension is the conservation, not conservatism. Do not confuse conservation with conservatism. Conservatism is a political worldview or attitude, whereas conservation is a basic dimension which organizes tradition, conformity, and security values, because all these values, tradition, conformity, and security-related values, help individuals or guide individuals to conserve, to protect the existing status quo, okay? So tradition values are respect, commitment, and acceptance of the customs and ideas that traditional culture or religion provide to the person. So respect for tradition, humble, moderate religiousness are values categorized under tradition values or value type. Conformity values is about our immediate interactions. Tradition values help us to pursue the ways of thinking and behaving which comes from the history, okay, from the previous generations. But conformity values refer to our regulation of behaviors when we are in immediate interaction with other people in a specific context. So it requires that we restrain our actions, our inclinations and impulses, and because we restrain them because we would like to avoid upsetting or harming others, and we do not like to violate social expectations or norms. So conformity values refer to concepts such as being obedient, honoring parents and elders. Finally, security values refer to safety, harmony, and stability of society or of relationships and of the self. Family security, national security, health are typical security values, and they all organize as conservation values. Now, what is the dynamic relationship between all these 10 different value types, which are organized into bipolar dimensions? Now, this is the theoretical figure that is proposed by Schwartz. It is a circular dynamism. What does circular mean? It means that if one value type, a distinct category, is similar to another value type, another distinct category, in terms of the motivations they share, then they are placed close to each other as neighboring domains here. So power and achievement, remember, have very similar motivations, although they are distinct categories. Since they have very similar motivations represented by the values in these value types, they are placed as adjacent domains here, as neighboring areas, okay? So achievement is similar to hedonism, so they are placed here. But hedonism is less similar to power than achievement is. So it is a little bit farther away. So this is called the dynamism. So the order of values around the circle represents a dynamic continuum, süreklilik, a dynamic continuum of similarity and difference and conflict across value types in terms of the motivations they represent. So power and achievement are similar, so they are placed as neighboring domains, but power requires that you dominate other people. If you believe but dominating other people is in conflict with being in harmony with all the people and the universe. So they are placed in opposite positions, okay? So this dynamism shows us which value is compatible, uyumlu, with other values, and which value types are incompatible, uyumsuz, with the opposite value types. So for instance, if stimulation is important to you, you seek novelty and change, different kinds of stimuli, but different kinds of stimuli, experiencing different kinds of stimuli can be risky in terms of protecting your health. So you might try many different food, but some foods can be dangerous for your health. So protecting your security and opening yourself up to different experiences are in conflict. So in value types in opposing poles are in conflict, they are incompatible, but value types which are placed closer to each other are compatible, they are not in conflict, rather they are similar in terms of motivation. And in this table, you observe why or in what terms two adjacent domains are similar. So power and achievement are similar value types because they both express social superiority and esteem. So achievement and hedonism value types are similar because they both focus on self-centered satisfaction. Let's give another example. For instance, tradition and security, where is that? Okay, tradition and security values are similar because they both focus on preserving existing social arrangements that give certainty to life. So if you follow the customs, things are certain. And if you stay at home, things are certain. So they are similar in that way, but they are two distinct types. So let's give another example. Universalism and benevolence are similar because they both focus on enhancement of others, not the self, but enhancement of others and transcendence of selfish interests. Here, power and achievement are focusing on selfish interests, whereas universalism and benevolence are transcending and disregarding selfish interests. That's why they are in conflict with each other. That's why they form a typical, the first dimension, which is self-enhancement versus self-transcendence dimension. So the poles, kutupları, the opposite poles of this dimension mean that there is a motivational conflict between these values and these values here. And another conflict is observed between openness to change and conservation values. Look at stimulation self-direction again. Stimulation and self-direction values are similar because they both focus on intrinsic interest in novelty and mastery here. Whereas tradition, security, and conformity, tradition, they refer to preserving existing social arrangements that give certainty to life. Here, you are not certain. If you want to be creative and curious, you might not be always certain because you might not be certain about the knowledge that you are acquiring. First of all, you should make much thinking, much research, much reading, and so on. But it requires that you are very tolerant to uncertainty, whereas you might feel very certain by readily accepting how the tradition explains the reality, and you might feel readily certain by protecting the security of yourself and your family and nation and so on. So conservation values are in conflict with openness to change values. So it means there are two basic motivational conflicts in the theory postulated: openness to change versus conservation, and self-transcendence versus self-enhancement. And hedonism shares elements of both openness to change and self-enhancement, as you observe here. So this is the circular theory of motivation, which represents a dynamic ordering of value times, referring to their motivational similarities, differences, and dissimilarities. Okay, now I'll stop here. Then we will go on next week. I hope you enjoyed this theoretical lecture and you understand it well, because we have to know these important conceptualizations so that we can apply them in character and values education. So until next week, take care of yourselves. Bye.